So, and just like that, it's Thursday Thoughts at 3 time. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Amanda Bruce. I am the Interactive Media Director for NPM, and I am so excited here because I have two of my colleagues and coworkers here today. I have the Vice President for Programming and Planning, Berta Sabrio, joining me today. And the man of the hour, our guest today for Thursday Thoughts at 3, is Dr. Bob McCarty, who is our Interim Executive Director for NPM. Mm-hmm. So, hi, Bob. Welcome.
Well, hello. Good afternoon. And whatever time zone you're in, whoever's listening. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully, we're getting a couple different time zones for those who are live and also those who watch the replay. So today's Thursday Thoughts at 3 is going to feel a little bit different than some of our other Thursday Thoughts at 3, because this is just going to be a chance for you as members of NPM to hear from Bob as our new Interim Executive Director and also ask him some questions. So I, like the good host of Ministry Monday, have prepared some questions that I will ask you, Bob. But other than that, if you have any other questions for Bob, please put them in the chat box on the YouTube stream if you're watching this live, and we'll be glad to answer them throughout this process. So, sure. Bob, of course, you are our Interim Executive Director. Can you provide a little bit of background for members who may not know much about you?
Yeah. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks very much. And first off, it's a pleasure. This is my first time. This is my first Thursday Thoughts. I'm very excited about all this, I have to tell you. And I am the Interim Executive Director effective Saturday. I think this coming Saturday is when I officially become the Executive Director. But I've spent my entire professional career working for the church. And I've worked for the church at every level. I started out as a parish youth minister, DRE. I worked in the Archdiocese, and that was in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. I went to the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and I worked in their diocesan Office of Youth Ministry. And then I went from there to the national office, to the National Federation for Catholic Youth Ministry. So I think one of the things I bring to the table is that experience of church at every level. And for 19 years, I was the executive director of NFCYM, and some of our members from NPM, if you're familiar at all with the National Catholic Youth Conference, with NCYC or the National Conference on Catholic Youth Ministry, they were services of the Federation. There were things I was very involved in. One of the interesting things, and I was thinking about this when you gave me the questions. For a year, I was the chief operating officer for the Catholic Mobilizing Network Against the Death Penalty. It was just a fascinating opportunity. It was kind of like NPM. It was a time-limited service to that organization to help them organize internally and externally. And I thought that was great preparation for my work with NPM. And then on the side, I'm an organizational consultant. I help parishes and organizations do strategic pastoral planning. And then I teach. I'm an adjunct faculty at Catholic University and at the University of Dallas. I think, though, the most important thing, I'm a parish volunteer. I think it's really important to know that for 35 years, I've been volunteering in my parish youth ministry programs. And now I am the director of our adult faith formation team at my parish, at St. Francis of Assisi Parish in Laurel, Maryland, part of the Archdiocese of Baltimore. So I've had a checkered career in the church, as I like to think.
Well, but you're talking to a lot of pastoral musicians, and many of us haven't necessarily had a straight and narrow path, if you will, to ministry. Like you, I mean, many of us have multiple jobs or multiple fields in which we work, as well as ministry. So I think that's really relatable.
Yeah, and I think, and folks who stay in the field or stay in this church work, I think the more we can draw on those really practical experiences. I mean, I love our theology and I love thinking big picture stuff, but then you walk into Mass on Sunday and you look around and you see the parishioners and you see the kids and you see the folks who are so excited about being at liturgy. And then you see the ones who are less excited about being at liturgy. And so I always think it's kind of a reality check that this is the church. This is what we signed on to, the church in its full glory. There they are sitting with us on any given Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you.
Amanda, I also have to tell you that I had the pleasure, I'm I'm going to say pleasure, Bob, just because I'm going to be nice.
Kind of wondering where you were going. Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of being the music director or pastoral associate at the parish where Bob worships for 21 years. So we've known each other a long time. And Bob, I have to say is actually, only want to say this one time, he has a very lovely voice and is actually an excellent assembly singer. So he's very involved in
Berta, you know what my goal is.
I know, but it's not going to happen.
Liturgical dance. I think I am called to liturgical dance. I have been practicing, and I will say that Berta was not empowering at all about my liturgical dance career. So I just want you to know that.
Yes, yeah. NPM, you're welcome. You're welcome that I did not empower Bob's liturgical dance.
All right, there's probably truth to that. Okay, you're doing us all a favor. That is pretty funny. Pretty funny.
Let's talk about NPM actually. So let's talk a little bit about NPM and you. So how have you been involved in NPM in the past?
Well, yeah, I think there's one piece that's pretty interesting that neither of you actually know about either, and that is in the past, I did 2 or 3 keynotes. I think they were at regional NPM conferences when I was the director at the National Federation for Catholic Youth Ministry. And one of my memories about that is how impressed I was that the field of pastoral musicians would invite a youth minister in to talk about my experience of church. So I have this, what I count as a really, I got warm memories of my association with NPM. But it was three years ago, I guess, in the conference in Baltimore. And it was actually Berta and Steve who invited me to do 2 things at the convention in Baltimore. I was invited to do a workshop. I did a workshop on disaffiliation. I've been project manager with St. Mary's Press on this research on why are young Catholics leaving the church. So I had a chance at the convention to do a presentation on that. But I also coordinated our emerging leaders program in Baltimore, and then it was repeated again in Raleigh. And so I've had the chance to work with NPM on the convention. And then in Raleigh, I don't know if you even remember this, but in Raleigh, I also got a chance to do a workshop on recalibration that I've been looking at this whole issue of what do people in ministry do when it comes time to let go of our formal ministry. So instead of thinking of it as retirement, I've been framing that transition in terms of recalibration and how do you plan for a preferred future. So these last 2 years, I think have been a terrific experience with NPM for me. And I think that's what led to the board's invitation to be the animator for the NPM 2.0 process. It was right after the Raleigh convention when the board asked me if I would be interested in being kind of that outside consultant to help this whole process of NPM 2.0. And so I signed on and I designed that process around assessing the field, designing the structures, beginning to implement, and then to evaluate the whole process. And I think it was because of that, and that started in August of 2019. And so it was in August of 2020 when Steve announced that he would be leaving NPM effective, Saturday. The board asked me if I'd be willing, because of my work in NPM 2.0, would I be willing to stay on in a different role and kind of hold the office together while the board engaged in the search process. So my career with NPM actually has been pretty extensive. So it is pretty exciting to be here.
Good. And we're glad to have you. I mean, we're very grateful.
That's a very good answer, Amanda. I thought you should know that. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I'm grateful. I'm glad. Yes, that's a really good answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. So, let's go with that flattery a little bit more, Bob. Okay. And then we'll get to some hard hitting things, I promise. But, so in some ways, I think you really have a great lens as interim ED because you have not been a pastoral musician for 30 years, like so many of our members have. So from an outsider in this way, like from someone who's fairly new to NPM in the past several years, what are some of the things that you really see that you like about NPM? Some of the things that you really think are great values?
Yeah, and I think the whole reason I signed on, and there's two parts to this. One is that the members of NPM that I've met over the years, and not just because of NPM, but an awful lot of NPM members were involved in my work at the NFCYM. A lot of pastoral musicians were involved in our NCYC conference and for our adult conference. I've always been impressed by the passion of the members. Membership organizations in the church are really tough. I mean, think about this. All of us, the criteria for being a member in a national organization is that you're already working in the church somewhere. So here we are, we're doing this work in our parishes, schools, dioceses, or all those church settings. We're doing that, and then we sign on to a national organization. And you can only do that if you have a passion for the mission, if you have a passion for the ministry. And I have found that I find that in the NPM members. I find that there's a passion for the ministry in the members. And the membership of NPM, I want this to come out correctly, represents the entire spectrum of church. We live and we work in a big tent church, and the NPM membership reflects that big tent. And I think that allows for increased creativity and inclusivity. And so I find those to be really important characteristics at NPM. But now, Amanda, I would add on another reason why this is important to me and what I like. I am concerned about what we are going to look like post COVID-19. What kind of church are we going to be? And I've been thinking more and more, people are going to need to worship well. I think people are increasingly starved for face-to-face communal worship. And so as much as the church has tried to do worship online, that only gets us so far. And so when we get together again, when we start to gather as church, I think that music is part of what helps people worship well. And so I've really been thinking a lot about this post-COVID church and what that's going to be for us, and how do we make sure that liturgy is a participant sport, not a spectator sport. And I think pastoral musicians have a key role to play in that. I do.
Yeah, I think so too. I really do. So let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into that challenging spot too. And I'm going to press pause before I ask this question and say that if you're watching this and you just tuned in the last couple minutes, we're about to start into an area where if you have any questions for Bob, feel free to put them in the live chat of this if you're watching it live. But so as I do ask this question, feel free to ask any other questions you want, and we will address them as best as we can after this. So my next question to you is, so you mentioned that you have been the animator of the NPM 2.0 process, and NPM 2.0 is a phrase that a lot of NPM members are at the very least peripherally aware of, if not quite aware of at this point. So from your perspective though, what are the key issues that the association is facing right now?
Yeah, this is pretty fascinating, and maybe it's the gift of the outsider, but having worked with several national ministry organizations, NPM is experiencing what the church is experiencing. But to its credit though, NPM has taken on this challenge. And I think NPM has been vulnerable and humble enough to say, we have to evaluate our structures. And my experience of church is that there's three key components to an organization thriving in church ministry. I think of vision, structure, and leadership. And so what NPM has done is started by re-looking at our vision and to be very clear that what we're about here is to do a divinely inspired worship and we think music plays a critical role in that. So we have this vision for what church needs to look like. But in order for vision to become actualized, you have to pay attention to your structure. And I think NPM has been humble enough to say, we need to look at the entire structure, that there are no sacred cows here that can't be examined. And so NPM, to its credit, has really looked at how do we reframe the structure of NPM. And then the third part of this is around, I call it leadership. What are the critical leadership roles that help that structure achieve the mission of the organization? And I know this sounds like a little thing, but I think if I had to take this whole process and I had to find one symbol, it's shifting the role of my role, Steve's role, from president and CEO to executive director. That shift in title heralds a renewed emphasis on the role of members, that instead of thinking of NPM as a kind of a hierarchical organization, which is really typical for people in church work. I mean, we're used to thinking that way for all kinds of reasons. What NPM's trying to do is we're trying to acknowledge we are living in a different era now. And so for NPM to be successful, we have to be very intentional about engaging our membership in the mission of the organization. And so how do we begin to integrate and engage members first around the mission, but then second in the structure, so that no longer can we rely on a national staff to provide all the programs and services for an organization. That simply can't happen. So how can members begin to take that on? How do we foster full active and conscious participation of our members in the work of NPM? That's where we're going. And Amanda, the thing about that is we're not the only ones who have to struggle with this. I think all national groups are doing this. I just think NPM, I really do think NPM's out in front, because we've been doing this now for about a year and a half or longer to look at the structures. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yes.
Did I
Yes.
answer your question?
Yes, I
All
think
right.
it does.
Really
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So last question for you that we have is, so, we mentioned your interim, but what are some of the goals that you have for NPM in your time as interim executive director?
I will say being an interim director is really kind of a funny position to be in, because I have to be really conscious that I am temporary. I am a placeholder, that I am trying to bridge what the board and what Steve have been doing now for the last 3 years. And my goal here, personally and professionally, is can I help maintain the momentum of the organization as they go through the hiring process for someone who will be with NPM, I would hope, for 5 years or longer. I really do. And to do that, I think part of my work, or part of my goal as an interim director, I want to be able to strengthen our work processes so that the national office can be as effective as possible at engaging our members and fulfilling our mission. And so, but I am very, very conscious that I am inheriting all this work that's already been done. And I think my role here is to make sure that work continues on beyond me, and that NPM as an organization doesn't lose any of the momentum that we've developed over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I answered that right.
Yeah, it does. It does. So I'm going to throw one more question in here, Bob. And this one's coming out. I didn't tell you this one's coming. So are you ready?
You want me to do liturgical dance?
I don't. Bob, I don't.
I feel the love. I have to tell you, I feel the love. I do.
So here's my question for you. What are some of your favorite hymns? What are some of the favorite things you sing at church?
I have to tell you, you think that's an easy question, but now it's a soapbox.
No, I didn't say it was an easy question.
No. Because I come out of the stance that the hymns we choose to sing at church reflect our spirituality. And this all started in youth ministry for me. It did. I'm very conscious of making sure we connect what I call vertical and horizontal spirituality, that me and God has to impact me and my neighbor. And music can do that. I am very conscious sometimes that we choose music that is no, there's no good way to say this. I want to make sure that the hymns we choose connect the vertical and the horizontal. I am in favor of praise and worship, but that emphasizes the vertical. I'm in favor of our music that revolves around social justice, and that emphasizes the horizontal. And I always think that the challenge is, how do we do both? So for instance, I happen to personally love the hymn, How Great Thou Art. I think that is I think it's one of the original praise and worship songs. I really do. But it's vertical spirituality. It's about me and God and the grandeur of God. And at the same time, I love the songs that call us to social justice. Everything from Voices to Challenge to whatever we want to pick that calls us to go forth. Here I Am, Lord. I mean, you see what it does? We got to keep connecting the vertical and the horizontal. And it comes right out of my experience of the young church who want to have that personal relationship with God. And at the same time, they need to be reminded that it gets lived out in the community, in social justice, in our service to others. So, okay, that was a soapbox, Amanda, but
that's all right. I think we could have you on Ministry Monday for this topic. Now I'm very interested. You're going to get another call from me, Bob.
No, see, Amanda, it's really important. It really is for pastoral musicians to think about that, because of the impact. Because we live in a big tent church, we need to pick our music not based on our personal preferences. We have to know the community. And so in my work, especially starting with youth and young adults, that connecting the vertical and horizontal are really important images around how the music that we choose. And so I will say, on any given Sunday, I always pay attention to the songs we're singing, the theology that's implied, and the spirituality that's implied. And I love it when we have a blend of the vertical and the horizontal. I do. I'm very conscious of that in my parish.
Good.
Berta.
Great.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, at this point, Bob, there are, believe it or not, no questions on Thursday Thoughts at 3. You have wowed them. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the wow factor. Yeah, we'll do that. But I do know that a lot of people do watch the replay of this. And so if anyone wants to get in touch with you with any questions they have, how do they best get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can email me right at NPM, director@npm.org. Okay. Yeah, it's really simple. But I really do hope our members think about that, Amanda, the theology and spirituality of the music we choose and how that fits in, and to make sure we have that blend and a balance, because we're working in a big tent church. We really are. So there we are.
Good. Thank you. Berta, you need to recruit him now to have a key change on this topic. So start looking. Do you know what a key change is, Bob?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, but
a key change.
We have a whole different language in NPM that I have to tell you. That's been my biggest learning so far is language and initials. NPM, pastoral musicians, you have initials I've never heard of before. And so that's really fascinating to figure out what we're talking about.
And isn't it funny?
It's true. No, it's true.
Isn't it funny? Because not only do we speak music, but we also speak Catholic. So already we have a whole bunch of weirdness. And then you add liturgy on the top of that. So we are definitely speaking many languages. And so you're going to be so lingual when you leave us, for sure.
I will. Yes. Yep, I have a whole new appreciation. I do. So thanks. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you for your time today on Thursday Thoughts at 3. As you get ready for Saturday or next week, as you begin as our interim executive director, thank you for being willing to be our bridge, if you will, as during this time of transition for NPM. And we hope that if you're watching this and if you have any questions for Bob, please feel free to email him at director@npm.org. But again, thank you for your time, Bob. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Berta.
Thanks, everybody.